So many technologies came out of COVID, and at the time, technology wasn't there. You couldn't just take a headshot remotely. This was an idea, maybe.
Welcome to another episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast. I'll be your host today. My name is Brett Gilliland, and I am here with Brian Confer. Brian is co founder of a business called Capturely. Capturely is exceptional when it comes to helping people capture their their picture, their profile. And I'll let Brian talk about that a little bit more, but they've grown considerably and are experiencing some of those wonderful growing pains that we all experience as we're growing. And so I want to welcome Brian, you to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Brett. Excited to be a part of this.
Okay, so give us all a little bit of context about Capturely. We want to know who we're talking to, what kind of business this is,
Yeah,
and then we'll jump into our normal format.
I love it. Yeah, I'll give you some history. Probably bring some context to kind of where we are now and the journey we've been through a little bit. I Full transparency, neither my co-founder or I are photographers, and we are also non-technical. Our path to this industry was not because we had a passion for photography. It's honestly because I had helped a company grow. Both my partner and I helped them grow from about 10 to 140 million in revenue, and big sales organization. And one year we had headshots for our team. We said, hey, we're going to get everybody in there. Everyone's customer facing. Let's get headshots for everyone. Da da da. And it was just a terrible experience. So we were getting headshots into. We were doing headshots for the team, and all 240 of us, and it was a nightmare. The headshots were from the 90s. They were outdated backgrounds. Nobody liked their photos, which ultimately meant we spent a tremendous amount of time and money to get people together for getting photos, and it was a waste. And so when that company ended, I was like, I'm going to change this game. I think there's an opportunity here because I saw a personal brand rising, how photos were being used in corporate, but the industry itself was behind. So I created a mobile photo studio called the Headshot Truck. So think of a food truck, but there's a photo studio inside of it.
Yeah.
And it was designed for corporate, 5-minute headshots, modern backgrounds, 2U service, on demand, online scheduling. And we had a lot of success. We were able to land Netflix as our first big client, and then kind of snowballed into that Los Angeles. And they said, hey, we'd love what you did here. Can you do it in other markets? So we learned that that headshots, were needed all over the country, and there were all these individual photographers that could never get a consistent look and feel. So if you had 120 offices and 1,000 employees, it was a tremendous undertaking. So we became the photography company that would work with these larger companies, send out photographers all over the country, get consistent headshots at scale. And then the pandemic hit, and now this in-person company who relies on being in office and doing conferences could no longer do that.
Yeah.
So we were at a tough spot. We had just got an SBA loan to scale. We were rocking and rolling, brought on LinkedIn and Facebook as clients in March of 2020.
Right then.
For March to hit, and we went completely flat. So we said, oh, we got to start working on a way to create a remote solution. And, so many technologies came out of COVID, and at the time, technology wasn't there. You couldn't just take a headshot remotely. This was an idea maybe, but not anything that was at the forefront. And so it took us a long time to kind of perfect where we are now with this virtual headshot service, but now we offer virtual headshots at scale to companies all around the world. 25% roughly of the US workforce is remote, even more if you include hybrid workforce. And so now we went to only being able to service folks in person at specific cities to now essentially being able to offer this as a global solution to companies around the country, where you can get a 10-minute headshot from anywhere in the world using our app. We connect to your phone. We shoot the headshots for you. It's a do it for you service. Edit and retouch and deliver in 24 hours. So now you can get consistent photos of your team at scale affordably. And that's where we are now with Capturely.
That's pretty awesome. Really cool. Love the necessity, as they say, necessity is the mother of all invention, right?
You
Here
got
comes
it.
the pandemic, and your business model just got a severe attack, and it's like, okay, wait a minute, we got to do something different. And we heard so many great stories of people doing something a little differently, or maybe way differently as a result of the pandemic. But it's nice to add your story to that list of so many great stories. All right, so Brian, you guys do these headshots, you provide this great service. Um, and like you said, you're not even you weren't a photographer, you're not a photographer, you're not really a technology guy, but you've still built a tech company that relies on headshots as the primary service or product. That's pretty remarkable because you saw there's an opportunity, there's a need, and I think we can do something better than what the market is delivering today. So that's a great story. Let's get into the normal format of this is a two part, as you know. Part one is, hey, Brian's learned some really great things as he's gone through these experiences and he's grown his business to a certain point. What are some key lessons that you've learned? And we'll pick the top one or two depending on time and how deep we go. But a key lesson or two for you in your growth and development as a leader and in the growth of your business that might be applicable to other business owners listening.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many lessons that you learn by being a bootstrap startup and trying to trying to minimize the mistakes. I think the thing that we've learned the most is listen to the market and ask your customers what they want from you. I think so
Mm-hmm.
often founders, come up with this idea and we love this thing that we want to do, and we don't always think like, yeah, but do people actually want to buy that? Is that actually how they want it delivered? Is right. So the way we started structuring Capturely from the beginning, especially with the virtual headshots, was really asking folks how they what they're looking for, and then creating the service around that, rather than creating a service and then asking people if they like it, saying like, great, let's make sure that we do it this way, that we deliver transparencies, that this becomes part of the onboarding process, that the pricing model makes sense for how they want to buy or how they do buy, because we're a B2B service. So, I think that's the biggest lesson that we learned, was when we started going off on tangents of things we thought might be cool but actually didn't have market viability, to reel it in, to ask our clients what they're actually looking for, and to listen and then give them what they're looking for. That has been our key to success so far, is just continuing for my business partner Rob and I to have founder led sales, to meet with these people and understand what's going on, so that we can be, ear to the ground on how this needs to evolve, because ultimately it has to continue to evolve in order for it to be successful.
I love that. One of my very favorite friends slash mentors out there when it comes to strategy, he would always use the word relevant. He said, "You must be relevant." And how better to maintain relevance than to go to the source and talk to them? What do you care about? What's relevant for you? Because when all spending went under intense scrutiny at the time of the pandemic, right? You had these big accounts, you'd sold LinkedIn and Facebook, and then it just went flat, right? So all spending went under intense scrutiny. Every penny, where are we going to spend? No, we're pulling all that back because we don't know what's going to happen next. And only the most relevant of products or services were being purchased at that time, the things that really mattered.
Yep.
So how do you stay relevant? You stay super connected to the market. You ask them what exactly they want or need, and then you tailor what you're doing to what they're saying. I think that's super wise. As far as your own growth, I think we have time for another. We'll sneak another one in here, Brian. Your own growth, because that's for sure growth as an entrepreneur and product market fit and how to make sure we design to what the market wants. But as far as your evolution from scrappy, gritty co-founder to now, leading a larger and larger team, a bigger business, what about your own personal growth? What would you share as a lesson in your own self as a leader that might be helpful to somebody else?
Yeah, I really had to dive deep into sort of some self assessment, reflection, and being really willing to learn. I think so many of us can, just kind of go with what we know, and it you can have some fear around learning something new, or am I going to make a mistake? And I really decided to reinvest in myself during the pandemic. I went back to school. 20 years since undergrad. I was fortunate enough to get executive MBA program at UCLA Anderson, which was incredible for me. But I think really what it did is it sparked my curiosity for learning and being a continuous learner. And so now I feel like such a sponge. I'm listening to podcasts, I'm meeting with friends, I'm always out there understanding what's going on outside of my business, because the more I learn outside of my business, the more that I'm been able to apply it to my business. And so I think that's the thing in terms of a lesson of anything, is just like make sure that you're always learning and listening, because that will make you just a more informed person, but also help your business ultimately, rather than like being on the front lines 24/7. And I know what that's like firsthand. Sometimes you got to step back and pay attention to what else is going on out there.
Yeah, yeah. I think both the things you shared are related. In both cases, you said get outside of yourself, go learn from others. In the one case, it was about customers and what they want, but in the other case, it was about how do I stay open to learning and growth, not get so narrow and myopic in my view in my own business that I don't see my blind spots, that I don't see other perspectives, that I don't learn about what's happening in the world and all the ways that those things that are changing out there might apply to my business. I think that's great. Congratulations, by the way, on going back to school.
Oh,
That's
thank
really
you. This weekend is 1 year graduate since I graduated, which is amazing. I can't believe it. It's really I'm happy that I did it.
yeah, good for you. I love it.
All right.
All right, let's shift gears to the second part of our programming here, which is acknowledging that we're still in the thick of growing and you're still in the thick of growing. And as you're working to develop your team and grow and achieve your lofty goals, the aspirations you have for the business, there are still some things that you're trying to figure out. So let's talk about one of those today, and maybe we'll get into a second one. But we talked for a little bit before we hit record, and sounds like you have something on your mind that might be helpful for you, but also useful for other business owners.
Yeah, I'm struggling with what I think a lot of bootstrap startup, and smaller companies as they grow are struggling with, which is spending a lot more time on the business rather than in the business. And I'm our head of sales. I'm our marketing adjacent. I customer success. All sort of all the things that you can be when you're a co-founder. And um, when you're running that marathon, you're running those sprints all day, every day. It feels like that whoever that Greek guy, I forget the Greek myth of the guy who's rolling the was that Hercules or who was that rolling the rock
Was it
up?
Atlas?
Maybe
Was he
it makes
pushing?
sense that it's Atlas rolling it uphill, and then it just goes right back down the hill again. And his whole thing is just like never gets it to the top. So putting some pieces in place, some standard operating procedures, nomenclature, business rules, automation, all of the things that take a ton of time, and it's really hard to do during your standard workday because you're
Kind of regular business
regular
hours.
business
Yeah.
hours. But taking the time to dive into that, and it's been a struggle for a long time to be able to get to a point where I could do it. And now that I'm starting to do it, and I'm seeing the kind of some of the things working, putting an account executive place, putting an SDR in place, um, assigning tasks and things to them. It's like losing the preciousness of everything. Um,
Yeah.
but it is hard to do, and so we're deep in trying to figure out, all right, what properties in HubSpot are we updating? How are we doing reporting? What has changed in our pitch? How do we want to re-record it? There's an infinite amount of decisions that need to be made, and it's just like where do you start eating the elephant? You know?
Yeah. Great. Great issue. And one I think a lot of people can relate to. And to recap, what I think you're saying is for a long time as a co-founder, you've been in the business, in the machine, doing the sales, ensuring customer success, like all the stuff to get and keep customers, right? Like We want to make sure they deliver, or we deliver what they purchased, what we promised them. And so you're busy in the day to day. And you've known, hey, I gotta break out and do more work on the business. You started to create some SOPs and standardize some things and upgrade this. And so you know the value of working on the business. You're not here saying, should I work on the business? You're saying, how do I find more ways to work on the business, free myself up from working in the business?
That's right.
Am I getting that right? Yeah. Okay. And it sounds like you've already done some things toward that end. Congrats, by the way, on hiring an SDR and an account exec, and slowly. But that's the path, right? It's like, how do we organize some work and then hand it off to somebody else capably? All right. Before we get into that anymore, I would love for you to help. I don't know, provide some quantifiable shape or depth to this issue for those who are listening, because we all kind of get it conceptually. I need to spend more time working on the business, less time in it. But what do you think is the real cost of not working on the business? Like, if you just keep doing the thing that you've been doing, you keep running that marathon or those sprints day after day, what is the real cost of that to you, your business, to others? What do you think is the problem?
Burnout. I mean, and it already has come at the cost of burnout, right? It's no increase in the amount we can pay ourselves as business owners. We're the last ones to get paid, right? So, in order to reach that next plateau, that next level of revenue, in order for us to make a living doing it is what we're here to do. That's what you have to do. So it's coming at the cost of burnout. It's coming at the cost of um, not making more money. Ultimately, it means the company will die slowly. And we had to make choices that required a bunch of sacrifice. But in order to do that, we needed to make sure the sacrifice made sense.
Mm.
And so it all starts with that plan, right? It all starts with that. You have to figure out how to prioritize it. Otherwise, ultimately, it's going to lead to the demise of the business.
Yeah, and I mean, you said these words already, but I'm just going to bring them back to the conversation. You said the word bootstrapped, so we're only living off of what we can produce, the current machine, and so it puts even more pressure on the current machine. And I'm not advocating, by the way, that you go out and raise funds. I love practical founders, as my friend Greg Head calls it, practical founders, and he's created a whole community out of practical founders who are proud of bootstrapping and not taking on other people's money and maintaining full control of their destiny. And like, that's a cool thing. But when you are bootstrapped, you don't have any extra room from a fuel perspective. You don't have resources that you can draw from outside of your own sales. And then the other thing you mentioned is you and your co-founder, which is, it's good and bad, right? The good is you got somebody to run this with, these sprints every day. At least somebody's alongside of you. But those limited funds that you have available through your sales are split up now between the two of you and the rest of the team. But when you talk about needing to make more so that you guys can earn a good living, that's complicated by the fact that there's at least two of you co-founders, right?
100%.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm connected to it. And emotionally, let's just call it. I mean, the weight of it all. It's not just that you run. I mean, we use the term burnout a lot, but it's the emotional weight of that always being on you. It never really quite goes away. You sleep with it. You go on vacation with it. You go on dates with your significant other with the weight of that business. And for some who are parents, are going to the kids' soccer game with that weight, and they're trying to balance all of that, and it's just a lot, and it doesn't stop. So that's the situation. It seems worth solving, right? It's a big enough thing. It does seem worth solving. And I love the way that you already couched it a little bit, Brian, and that, like, where we can, we're squeezing out little improvements here and there. Like, let's document that process. Let's improve. Let's record a new pitch. You mentioned that. So wherever there are places in the business that have a one-time investment and a multiple-time benefit, those are the places where you start to see some leverage opportunity in your business, even in small areas. So when you think about working on the business, how can you carve out some amount of time on a regular basis to look for improvements that would have a one time or relatively low cost, but have multiple benefits or, benefit over time. That's where you want to start investing. And in certain situations, especially if there's a strategic reason to do so, you might put an inordinate amount of investment towards an improvement that's going to yield something really big. But for most of us, just getting started on working on the business more, we're just looking for smaller increments of time. Might be 30 minutes every morning before you start your day to just get clear on what are the key things to move forward today. It might be 2 hours every Friday. Or maybe for some of us, we can't afford it on Monday through Friday. So 2 hours on a Saturday. But anything you can do to start carving out chunks of time that are going to be business building, business capability building efforts, investments that are going to pay off for you, that are going to start to free you up to do other things. So, would you like? Is there any one part of your business you'd like to thought partner on here for a minute, or is this rambling useful?
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, I'm in sales, so that's probably what I'll go to first. Is like taking a look at our pipeline and our sequences. You know, the communication. The how do we minimize the sales cycle and the number of activities back and forth with the client, and create some automation that would allow folks to get a little further down the buyer's journey before they have to talk to a person, right? Those are kind of some of the things
Yes.
that as you're talking, I'm thinking about ways to become a lot more efficient and scale myself, if you will, a little bit more.
Yeah, and we do that by giving what I'll call like lower value tasks to another person or automation. Ideally, let's automate those tasks. But if you think about where you and your co-founder started, you guys were learning and doing everything in the business, and we can oversimplify that and call that $10 an hour work. And then at some point, or maybe the learning is the $10 an hour work, and the doing is more like $100 an hour work. But we want to spend more time on higher level activities and bring in. I mean, you can nowadays there are contractors. There's a whole gig economy out there. People who are willing to take freelance, little projects, and as much as possible, how do we take tasks that we don't absolutely have to be the ones doing and hand those off to somebody else or automate, outsource, whatever. So I think there's some work to be done there. But what I liked about where you went with the sales conversation is now I'm probably past getting rid of some of these lower level activities. How can I make our process even more efficient? How can I shorten sales cycle times? How can I get in front of more of the right people? Maybe improve the lead quality of the people that we're having conversations with. So there are other things that we can think about, but only if we carve out time to do it. So for you, Brian, how often? What's your I don't know, your schedule or cadence for sales improvement time? Like when do you do that?
It almost doesn't exist, Brett. I mean, I think like from the moment I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning because I'm on Pacific time, my business partner is on Eastern. I already have emails and Slacks and a million other things going, and it feels like it never ends, right? So I've had the most success with being able to get this done when I actually put it on my calendar, when I actually block out my calendar. Um, but then the salesperson in me goes, well, then people can't meet with you if you do that, right? And so I have to like go, yeah, but they can meet with me tomorrow, maybe, you know, trying to get over that hump. So it's about setting aside some time, I think, is when I've had the most success. But it doesn't happen. It's kind of like going to the gym, you know.
It is. It is kind of like going to the gym. So here are some tips for how you might improve your success rate in spending that time. So we're a lot of us are visual beings. Like we enjoy a visual reminder or a ding on our phone, right? You can set up alarms on your phone. You can put it in your calendar, but you can put a separate alarm in your phone. Maybe even a personalized one that has your voice saying, "No, Brian, really, it's time for you to work on the business, right? It's time for you to improve the sales process." Um, Another thing I did one time for a friend that was a business owner is I bought him a chess clock, which sat on his desk, and one side was time working on his business, and the other side was time working in the business. And when he, the day to day stuff, that clock was just rolling, and he could make a fan out of that clock. I mean, that was spinning all the time. But at the rare moments that he actually spent time working on the business, he was able to press that button and capture how much time am I actually spending on the business. And so maybe that's just another visual, a tangible thing that you could have in your work area that could remind you. And then I want to say the power of positive peer pressure is real. And so whether that's your significant other, right, or your business partner, or even a friend, somebody who's interested in you being your word and being successful in what you want to do, if you tell them, hey, I'm committing to this, it's why many of us have exercise buddies, right? Somebody who will go with us to go do that, because now it's not just fighting myself to get up and go to the gym, but I told somebody else I was going to be there, and they're going to miss me if I'm not there. So we want to engage other people in our success. We want to put structural elements around us, whether that's in our calendar or a visual reminder. Um, and then, Brian, you're a self-proclaimed sales guy. If you like rewards, maybe you give yourself a reward. Every time I spend this much time working on the business, I get to, I don't know, get my favorite Blizzard or whatever. I'll make one up for you, but you know, something.
Mint
So,
Oreo.
but
Mint
multiple
Oreo is my
angles.
favorite Blizzard.
All right,
Yeah,
mint
we'll
Oreo,
get a
yeah.
Mint Oreo Blizzard. That sounds great.
And if that's the payoff for you, it's like, okay, I'm going to do that because then I get the mint Oreo Blizzard. And that's a silly example, but you get the point.
Yeah.
Um, but multi-facets, multi-levers are usually the way to help us overcome some of those things that we're behaviorally challenged on. And I like the focus, or the idea of spending more time on the business, but it's so tempting to get sucked back in to the day
Oh,
to day.
with technology, everything's blinking at you. I've got voicemails coming in. I got a Slack. What else you want to do? Yeah, no,
Yes.
absolutely. You hit it all angles. It does come down to accountability, and it comes down to really like carving out that time, right? Being intentional with the time makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. I'll share one more that maybe, if only for a listener, if not for you, was kind of a fun one for me. There's this site, and I haven't visited it for a while, so I assume it's still there. It's called stick.com. Stick with two K's, okay?
Oh,
Stick with two K's.com. And basically, instead of rewarding yourself for doing something good that you want to do, you put a commitment in there that if you don't do it, you're going to get a punishment,
oh wow.
and it's a financial punishment. So you basically pledge. I don't know your political affiliation, but let's say you didn't want Biden to be reelected. Let's just say that for a second.
Okay.
You don't want Biden to be reelected. And so you put a commitment in there that I'm going to spend 2 hours every Friday working on improving my business, working on my sales process, whatever. 2 hours on Friday. If I don't do it, then I have to contribute X amount of dollars to Biden's campaign fund.
Oh wow.
And you set it up ahead of time, like the dollar amount, the credit card, and now you're the one that specifies if you got it done, and you appoint a referee, right, an outside person that that says yes, Brian did it or didn't do it or whatever. But then if you don't follow through on your commitment, you're actually funding something that you're not happy about, which I thought
Oh
was an
wow.
interesting way to like punish myself into doing something. So
Hey,
um,
whatever mental hack works for you. That's an interesting one.
yeah, super interesting. So I just throw it out there for anybody who might like that approach of, oh, I'm actually gonna punish myself financially if I don't do what I said. So
I
that
think
was
we're
a
all
that
going
was
to
an
get
interesting.
punished pretty heavily financially if Biden's not reelected, but you can cut that piece out of the interview.
Yeah, well, we won't get into any political affiliation here. That was just
Yeah,
that was
no,
just for fun, an
I'm
example.
a West
Okay,
Coaster, so enough said there.
yeah, everybody's going. We know where Brian leans.
That's
That's
right.
fine. Okay, so stick.com. That was fun. Little detour. One last thing that I'd say. In this constant effort that we're all making to do this balancing act, between working in the business and working on the business. We have to do both if we want to be successful. That's just plain and simple. In addition to some of the little individual behavior hacks that we talked about, I want to leave you with this thought. If you don't structure in a meeting rhythm, some official meeting rhythm way in your business, you will always get sucked to the day-to-day pressures, the day-to-day operational execution pressures. That will always happen. And so you have to create a meeting rhythm collectively for the business to take targeted, coordinated action towards common objectives, not just the day-to-day stuff, but the building the future stuff. And so annual planning, quarterly planning, monthly check-ins on the quarterly and annual plan, like those types of things, most of us execution-oriented business owners don't want to spend
Right.
any amount of time on that stuff.
Yep.
But if we don't carve it out, it's not going to happen. And we're just going to get swept away by the current of our day-to-day operations. And next year we're going to come up for air and go, how are we still in the same spot? We're not growing. We're stuck in this execution cycle because we didn't shift. We didn't build the next thing. And the only way to do it is to have a meeting rhythm where we consistently, with much discipline, consistently do some of this planning, long-term development stuff, and not just the day-to-day. And I would say, collectively speaking, Brian, hopefully this is helpful for you. If you spend about 80% of your collective time, energy, resources, management attention, right? All of that comes to bear in your business. You spend about 80% of that
On the
collectively on the
day-to-day,
day-to-day getting
and
the
about
results,
20%
and about
time
20%
on
over
building
time
the future.
on
That's
the
about
building
the
of the
right mix.
future. That's about the right mix. And if you're at 100% day to day and zero longer term stuff, then you could shift it to
Yeah.
90-10 at first. But we're working towards kind of an 80-20 mix on the
Makes
whole.
sense.
All right, Brian, it's been really great to learn a little bit about Capturely and to have you be so open about some of the things that have helped you and some of the things you're struggling with. How would people learn more about what you're doing with Capturely or connect
Yeah,
with
thanks
you
so
online?
much. This has been great. Yeah, capturely.com, capturely.com is our site. You'll find me, Brian Confer, Confer, on LinkedIn, and love to connect. Love chatting with business owners, fellow crazy people that jump off and build the plane on the way down. Like, love it. Let's all help each other. I think love the community.
All right. Very good, Brian. Thank you for being on the
Thanks,
show. It was
Brett.
a pleasure to have you here. Okay, for everybody out there listening, please do those things that we all know: subscribe and like and rate and review and share. We want to help as many seven-figure business owners as possible who are going through these same transitions, these same types of lessons and challenges. And we have great guests like Brian who come all the time and share their real things that are going on. So please continue to listen and share with others. And we'll see you next time for another episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast.